$3 billion a year, so $13 billion over 10 years. And I mean, I guess the way I've been looking at it, and I think a lot of my colleagues are, is that you know, our constituents are paying at the pump. They shouldn't also have to pay on tax day to subsidize these outrageous profits.
Why was it put into place in '04?
It was put in place to begin with to sort of, and it's not just for the oil companies, by the way. My bill repeals it only for the oil companies. But it was to try to incentivize domestic manufacturing and create jobs and put people to work. And in some of the industries that it applies to, it's certainly justified. But once you're looking at profits that are, you know, the oil companies, the big five oil companies realized almost $80 billion in profits last year. They don't need any further incentive beyond what they already have, which is that they're selling a product at a very high price that everybody needs.
Do you think that the high current price of oil is due to oil company policies?
I think it's due to a lot of factors, and I think right now the least of the factors that play into oil prices is supply and demand. I mean, just look at what happened yesterday. Oil dropped by almost $10 a barrel. There was nothing that happened in terms of supply and demand or globally that would have resulted in essentially a 10% reduction in the price of a barrel of oil. There's lots of factors. There is supply and demand. There's speculation, which is a huge component right now. There's geopolitical factors. There's the value of the dollar relative to other currencies. And also there's fear. But I think the biggest factor right now is speculation.
And so what's the point of your legislation? Is it to increase money to the government coffers? Is it to lower the price of gas?
I think it has two principal purposes. One is to, we all recognize we need to reduce our deficit, and we all need to recognize that we're going to have to make tough decisions in order to do that. This is one of those decisions, to take away a subsidy that the American people are paying for that is simply impossible to justify. I think the other one is just fundamental fairness. I mean, if we're going to ask, you know, kids to not go to Head Start, if we're going to ask seniors to pay more for nursing home care, if we're going to ask college students to pay more to go to college, all of which the budget that passed the House of Representatives does, then we should also be asking oil companies to do their fair share.
Is there any similarity between your bill that you've introduced and the windfall profits tax of the Jimmy Carter era?
I don't really think so. This is not taxing profit. What this is saying is that the industry does not need the incentives to do what they're going to do anyway, which is to drill and explore and drill for oil.
How did you vote yesterday on the House floor on drilling permits?
I voted no.
You voted no. Why?
Because first off, I think that to fast track environmental issues is unwise. And I also think, I mean, we had a very thorough bipartisan study that resulted from the BP spill. That study made lots of recommendations with respect to safety. At this point now, 14 months out from that spill, 13 months out from that spill, we have put in place none of them. And so the issue isn't about fast-tracking permits. The issue is, I mean, because we've granted a great many permits. I mean, there were 47 shallow water drilling permits requested for the Gulf of Mexico. So far, the Obama administration's granted 37 of them, and 7 others are under review. There have been 22 deep water permits issued. So it's not an issue about granting permits. We have to have a process that's fair, that's reasonable, that withstands environmental scrutiny, and also is safe. We need to be protecting the people who work on those rigs.
Yeah, and it was just about a year ago that the Gulf oil spill began. The one
yes,
that lasted.
I think it was April of 2010.
Right, right. Well, Doc Hastings, chairman of the Natural Resources Committee, spoke yesterday on the House floor. I want to get your reaction about oil permits.
My colleagues across the aisle will say that expanding drilling will do nothing to lower gasoline prices. The truth is, and this is the important part, it will send a strong signal to the world markets that the U.S. is serious about producing our own resources and bringing more production, American production, online. Furthermore, this argument has been used by opponents to American energy production for decades. We can no longer delay and prevent access to our own American resources. My colleagues will also propose increasing taxes on American energy production. Let me repeat that, Mr. Chairman. They will also propose increasing taxes on American energy production. I have to ask, when has raising taxes lowered the price of anything? And of course, the answer to that is never. And it won't happen with energy.
Congressman Bishop.
Couple of comments. First off, domestic production of oil in the United States is at an all-time high. So this notion that the Obama administration's policies are choking off domestic production is simply false. So we have increased over the last several years our production. It has done absolutely nothing to hold down price. This is not a supply-driven problem. This is a problem, as I say, at least at this point, in my view, and I think the view of a great many, is that the price is being driven more by speculation than by anything else. The point that Representative Hastings makes with respect to taxes, the House passed a budget that reduced the top tax rate for the top 1%, reduced it from 35% to 25%, so essentially a third reduction, but also says that we're going to hold tax receipts constant as a percentage of GDP at about 18%. Right now we're at 14.5% of GDP. So if we're going to reduce the top rate for the high earners, but yet we're going to keep tax revenue the same, I don't think you need a Nobel Prize in mathematics to figure out that someone who isn't paying now will be paying, and that someone are people that are below the top rate. So if we're going to increase the tax rate for the vast majority of Americans, I don't think it is at all, first off, we should not be doing that, but it is not at all unreasonable that we would increase the taxes paid by the most profitable corporations in the world, and 5 of them are the big 5 oil companies.
Congressman Tim Bishop, Democrat of New York, is our guest. Phone numbers are on the screen. 202 is the area code. For Democrats, 737-0002 is a number for you to call. For Republicans, 737-0001. And for all others, 628-0205. Now, while we invited Congressman Bishop on to talk about oil and drilling and taxation, etc., he is a member of Congress, so he can cover the gamut of congressional issues. Didn't mean to set you up like that. But he serves as well on the Education and Workforce Committee. And the unemployment numbers just came out, and want to get your reaction to this, Congressman Bishop. Employers added more than 200,000 jobs in April for the 3rd straight month, the biggest hiring spree in 5 years. But the unemployment rate rose to 9% in part because some people resumed looking for work. The Labor Department says the economy added 244,000 jobs last month. Private employers shrugged off high gas prices and created 268,000 jobs, the most since February 2006.
Well, I think this is sort of a good news, bad news story. The good news is that we continue to add private sector jobs. I believe this is now the 14th or 15th consecutive month that we have added private sector jobs, and as you say, the highest number of private sector jobs added since February of 2006, so all very good news. But the fact remains that we continue to have a chronic unemployment problem in this country, and the problem of the long-term unemployed is more pronounced than it has been in quite some time. So we have a long, long way to go, and we have a lot of work to do. But I think we should be encouraged that private sector employers continue to add to their workforces. One of the things that I know a great many of my colleagues and I have been troubled about is we're now 4 months into the Republican majority in the House of Representatives. They haven't offered a single bill yet that would stimulate job growth. And I think that is the #1 issue in this country, and that is one that I hope that we will turn to in a bipartisan way. We absolutely have to deal with that issue.
First call for Congressman Bishop comes from St. Petersburg. David on our Republican line.
Thank you very much, C-SPAN. Thank you, Congressman. I agree wholeheartedly. It's time to stop subsidizing the oil companies. But I believe that the Congressman's bill is motivated more by politics and good policy. I believe that what we're seeing here is a bit disingenuous. And I've asked the Congressman to say if he does agree we should stop corporate subsidies, which I agree wholeheartedly, why not stop more subsidies? Let's stop subsidies to other corporations, such as insurance companies that will have mandated insurance from private citizens, stimulus programs that subsidize local and state governments to keep government workers on with massive union benefits, other subsidies, the list goes on and on, farm subsidies, and likewise. Congressman, why would you continue to support other such subsidies, but why go only after the oil unless you're simply playing a game of politics?
First of all, I appreciate the question, and the bill is designed to advance a public policy initiative, and that public policy initiative is to get the oil companies to pay their fair share, and it will be folded into a larger bill that I filed yesterday that is a comprehensive assessment of both the subsidies that oil companies receive, trying to get them to pay on their leases, giving the president additional authority to release oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and to crack down on price gouging. But with respect to other subsidies, I voted as part of the Affordable Care Act, the health care reform bill last year, to reduce, if not eliminate, the subsidies that are right now paid to the private insurance companies for the Medicare Advantage program. That is a program that was sold to the Congress by the insurance companies as a means of saving money on Medicare. They said that they could provide Medicare services for about 5% less than the government provides it. Well, it turns out that they need approximately a 14% subsidy to provide the same services that Medicare, fee-for-service Medicare provides, and I voted to eliminate that subsidy. So I do think that the whole issue of corporate welfare is one that we need to look at and one that we need to be vigilant about, and particularly now that we're asking every other sector of our society to take tough cuts and to make sacrifices. I think we have to ask the corporate sector to do the same.
Sheraton, Ohio, John, Democrat.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Certainly, I'm in favor of cutting those tax benefits for the oil companies, as well as all corporations should be cut like that. You know, I'm 77 years old. I worked in construction all my life. There was no seniority or anything like that. And they talk about high union benefits and wages. Well, we earned them, every dime of them. I can recall in Cleveland when the iron workers put up a sign, would Nixon come up here? Hell no, he wouldn't. And 90% of the population in this country would not. But at least the Democrats try to do things for the people. The Republican Party, from the time I was a kid, and I've watched it, I've tried to analyze it over that period of time, 70-some years, they're a party of beginners. They know about everything, just as the last Congress was. No, against everything. We finally have a president that has some kind of smarts, intelligence, and certainly is a decent person. And all they do to him is say no and cut him up instead of working with him. Thank you so much.
Well, let me just comment. I do think that we are going to have to come together and set aside the differences that we have. And I'm very hopeful that the negotiations that are now being led by Vice President Biden around the issue of lifting the debt limit will yield the kind of bipartisan solutions that we need in order to move forward. We must move beyond the practice of political posturing and trying to score political points, and put in place some policy decisions that are going to move this country forward and help us serve the people that we were elected to represent. There has been an awful lot of obstructionism, particularly in the last Congress. I'm hopeful that, as I said, that we can move beyond that in this Congress.
Congressman Bishop, DWG 416 tweets into you, should we drill even more? I never understood why we would send billions to other countries when we could keep those dollars here at home.
Yeah. Yes, we should drill more. And again, this is one of the reasons why the debate is not as well informed as it ought to be. There are 80 million acres of federal lands, publicly owned lands, that are under lease to the oil companies right now for exploration and for drilling. Only 20%, roughly 20% of that acreage is under active development, either reconnaissance or actual drilling. And so what we're saying to the oil companies is, look, you've got roughly 60 million acres worth of federally owned land, government-owned land, that's available to you to explore and to drill. And it's estimated that there's some 11 billion barrels of oil available for those lands that are under lease. Have at it. Go through the appropriate process, but the leases were put in place so that the oil companies could explore and drill.
Next call for Congressman Bishop comes from Denver. Hi, Jerry, Independent Line.
Hello, Congressman, and thanks for C-SPAN and the opportunity to ask some questions. I'm an independent oil and gas producer. My company does not receive subsidies. I think the word is misconstrued here by C-SPAN and you, Congressman Bishop. But instead we receive tax preferences, which you are correct in helping reduce our income, and encourages my company, my partners, and other small and medium-sized independents to drill. Now, this has been in place since about World War II or before. It comes in various forms. Now, either I'll drill or I'll be taxed. If my income goes up and I have to pay taxes, the money either goes to drilling or it goes to the taxes. So we're looking at the small domestic tax structure. If it's amended, they'll end up paying drilling money and more tax. Now, the gentleman from Ohio would be the type of worker which supports my business. A small construction company supports drilling services. It could be environmental companies which support those services. So it's not just the producer, but it's the service companies, it's the contractors, it's the folks that have the porta potties on location when we drill wells. So I know you're aiming at big oil and you're aiming at all the political rhetoric surrounding that and their profits, but what about the small independents?
All right,
Well,
Jerry.
if I may, my bill applies only to the big five oil companies. It does not apply to the small independent operators such as yourself and others. It only applies to the big five, and I just think it is impossible to take the position that the big five continue to need the kind of public tax support that they now receive. I mean, the big five had profits of $77 billion in 2010. Their first quarter profits for 2011 was in the neighborhood of, of $35 billion, and that represents over a 40% increase from the first quarter of 2010, which, as I just said, was a pretty good year for them. So this is not about the kind of operator that you are. It's about Exxon, and it's about Royal Dutch Shell, and it's about ConocoPhillips.
Next call for Congressman Bishop comes from Brooklyn. Chris on our Republican line. You're on the air.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for C-SPAN. Thank you, Congressman, for taking our call this morning. Congressman, I just want to shift it a little bit because everyone's been on the oil. And I'm out in Long Island a lot and out in your district a lot. I have friends and business associates there. And I can tell you that starting a business of any size in Long Island is near impossible. The costs associated with it are prohibitively high. And the costs are really filtered down as well because there's all sorts of costs. You talk about the price at the pump, 50, 60, even 70 cents of that is in taxes. There's all sorts of costs of employing people and the new federal mandates, this creep of the federal government into everybody's business, where if you hit a certain size, it's like an employment tax on the employer. And this is prohibitive. So I think the tenor of the Democrat-Republican rancor that you're hearing is really the Republicans saying, less government, please stop with all the intrusions, whether it's giving tax breaks or not, and the Democrats saying, pay your, quote, fair share. And I don't know what the fair share is, but I think that once the government takes more than 20, 30% of any income, it's beyond fair and it's prohibitive and crushing. So I'll get off and take
All
your
right, Chris, thank you. Congressman Tim Bishop.
Let me just make a couple of comments. First off, I think the observation that it is difficult to get a small business off the ground is one that we have to pay attention to and work on. In the last Congress, we passed into law 8 separate tax cuts for small businesses. We recognize that they are the job creators in this country, and we wanted to put in place as many practices as we could to facilitate what the small businesses do, and I think we have to continue that. I also think the President's call back in, I believe it was early January, for an examination of all of the regulations that the federal government has and an effort to eliminate those that no longer serve a purpose or to streamline those that are exceptionally difficult to comply with. I think that is a good initiative on the part of the President, and in fact I called together a gathering of the small businesses in my district so that I could hear directly from them on those areas of government regulation that they found the most difficult to contend with, and you know, we're trying to assemble a process here where we will deal with the Office of Management and Budget to see what we can do for those where we might be able to deliver a beneficial impact to our small business owners. But I do think that all of us recognize that we have to put in place practices or policies that do help small businesses, and as I say, that's one of the reasons why we were so focused on cutting taxes for small businesses in the last Congress.
What was the tenor of your town meetings that you held over the Easter recess? Very different from the town hall meetings that I had in '09 and in 2010. They were very substantive and civil exchanges of information. And so I think, at least in my district, the tenor of the public discourse has improved significantly. Tell us about the 1st District of New York.
1st District of New York is approximately the last 75 miles of Long Island, the 75 easternmost miles of Long Island. It runs from basically a suburban area through the rural coastal communities of both forks of Long Island. Suffolk County, which is the county that we're a part of, remains the largest agricultural producing county in the state of New York, a little known fact. And
what do you grow?
We grow potatoes, we grow horticultural products, we grow vegetables, and the whole North Fork of Long Island is, there's about 40 vineyards on the North Fork of Long Island now, so it is becoming a wine region that is rivaling upstate New York and rivaling California. So we're very proud of that.
What's the unemployment rate?
Unemployment rate in Suffolk County is about 7%. Higher than, clearly, than any of us would like to see, but we're doing somewhat better than the national average.
Cleveland, Rich, Democrat. Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Since the oil is ours, it's our resources, right? Why can't we just pay somebody to drill? I see them on CNBC all the time saying that they can produce oil at like $20 a barrel, and pay somebody to refine it and keep those resources here in America.
Are you suggesting that we nationalize the oil industry? Is that what you mean by paying somebody to drill?
He is gone. I apologize.
Okay. If the suggestion was to nationalize the oil industry, I don't think anyone is discussing that or would be supportive of that. But yesterday, for example, on the floor of the House, as we were debating the final stages of Representative Hastings' bill, Representative Lujan of New Mexico offered what we call a motion to recommit that would specify that whatever was produced as a result of these new leases would remain for domestic distribution in the United States. So what we were saying is, if it's oil that's coming from U.S. lands and being drilled by U.S. companies, then it should be in the U.S. market for distribution and for refining and distribution. That motion to recommit was defeated. Democrats voted for it, Republicans voted against it. Frankly, I don't understand the logic that Republicans followed in voting against it. But I do think that if the oil is coming from federally owned lands that we have leased to private companies, it is not at all unreasonable to expect that that land that oil stay in the United States so as to hopefully have some beneficial impact on the price that Americans pay at the pump.
Do you think your bill has a chance?
Candidly, it doesn't. The Speaker of the House, despite earlier, I guess it was a week or so ago, saying that he thought maybe the time had come for these oil subsidies to be taken away, and Paul Ryan saying essentially the same thing. He has now made it clear, the Speaker has made it clear, that this kind of legislation will not come to the floor of the House.
Congressman Tim Bishop, currently in his 5th term. Prior to that, he spent 29 years at Southampton College, including a stint as college provost, director of student aid, and dean on enrollment. Next call for him, we have about 15 minutes left. Santa Clara, California. Hi, Lucy, Republican.
Hi. 3 quick facts. The Fed came to Congress 2 days ago and asked for $2 trillion. Nobody's talking about that. The oil subsidies were removed in the late 70s, so I don't know how Obama has been able to bring this green herring up, probably because he was so busy single-handedly killing bin Laden that, he couldn't, which he's known about since August, by the way. 10 months ago, he was informed that bin Laden was in that spot. And as far as listening to another Democrat talk about jobs, I watched them for 2.5 years try to deliver to the American people something the American people do not want, can't afford, and can't work, and is unconstitutional.
All right, Lucy, thank you.
Just a couple of comments. I'm not at all sure her reference to the removal of the oil subsidies in the 1970s. The domestic manufacturing production tax credit that I am seeking to have removed from the tax code was passed in 2004. So I don't know what subsidies she's referring to, but I will say that the oil companies realized subsidies or benefit from subsidies to the tune of approximately $3.5 to $4 billion a year, so 35 to 40 billion over 10 years. That's a big item for us, particularly as we're looking to bring our deficit down to manageable levels. With respect to jobs, I think that everyone recognizes that we need to increase the pace of hiring in this country. But let's recognize that we have added private sector jobs for the last 14 months. For the last 13 months of the Bush administration, we lost jobs each and every month, culminating in the last month of his presidency. We lost approximately 780,000 jobs. Thankfully, those days are behind us, and we are beginning the process of clawing our way out of a very deep hole. And as I say, we've had 14 consecutive months of private sector job increases, and hopefully we can keep that going, and hopefully we can increase the number of jobs that we add each month.
Next call, Hertford, North Carolina. Beverly, you are on the air.
Good morning.
Hi.
I just wanted to speak about the oil rigs drilling. They still all have the flawed blowout preventers. And I heard Bromwich, I think he's the man who's in charge. He said that all they have to do is prove that they can contain a spill in 17 days. That's ridiculous. As far as Obama is concerned, congratulations. Bush had his chance at Tora Bora, and he blew it.
First off, I think all of us, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Liberals, Conservatives, should be commending President Obama, the CIA, and our armed forces for the work that they collectively put in to bring Osama bin Laden to justice. It was a long time coming, and I think it's something that we should all celebrate. Secondly, with respect to the blowout preventers, one of the comments I made earlier is that, as I say, there was a significant assessment of the environmental disaster in the Gulf conducted by a bipartisan commission. They put in place, or pardon me, they recommended several safety mechanisms that we should put in place and process mechanisms that we should put in place to make offshore drilling more safe and more environmentally responsible. We have enacted none of those recommendations, and I think that we are flirting with another environmental disaster as long as we do not heed the recommendations of that commission.
Congressman Bishop, what was your reaction to that floater idea that came out about taxing vehicles by miles?
It's one of the issues that's out there. I mean, I serve on the Transportation Committee, and one of the issues out there is a way of replacing the motor fuels tax is with what's called a vehicle miles traveled tax. And I think it's something that we should look at. I am not endorsing it, but I do think that it is something that we should look at as we try to figure out ways to generate the kind of funds that we need to rebuild our nation's infrastructure. One of the great concerns that a great many of